This video contains spoilers. Watch the fucking show!
Hey guys, what's going on? And I'm back again today with another installment of Overlord Explained, wherein by I delve deeper into elements of the Overlord world and story and explain them in a more streamlined format that is easy to digest. I know it's been a while since my last video on Overlord, but with Season 4 coming out in just a few short months, it has motivated me to get more of these out. So one of the things I love about Overlord is how much time they spend showing us the world and other characters in the story. It really helps us see the story from multiple perspectives and adds some layers to the show. However, despite this, the anime still falls a bit short in explaining the full details of the systems in the world as well as the countries that make it up. And with that, we move on to the topic of today's video, which is the Re-Estize kingdom. Now, the Re-Estize kingdom is the first civilization that Ainz is exposed to when he is transported to the new world. The majority of events that take place during the first 3 seasons of Overlord either take place in or involve the kingdom, so they are a massive part of the story. So the Re-Estize kingdom, or as it's simply referred to as the kingdom, is one of the 3 major human nations that directly border Nazarik, the others being the Baharuth Empire and the Slain Theocracy. The kingdom is one of the many nations that were founded following the defeat of a group known as the Evil Deities, which happened over 200 years ago in the New World timeline. The kingdom is a feudal monarchy state with a hierarchical structure, with the king as the central political figure, the most recent in the anime being King Ramposa III. Following the king and the royal family, the next most powerful people in the kingdom are the nobles, who are individuals who possess major land holdings within the kingdom and are ranked based on their spheres of influence. In particular, there is a group of nobles called the 6 Great Nobles, which are the most powerful nobles in the kingdom who possess power and influence that rivals royalty. The land possession in the kingdom is also heavily skewed, with the king and the great nobles together owning around 60% of the land, whilst the remaining 40% is split amongst the numerous lesser nobles. At the bottom of the structure is the serfs, who are people that live and work off the land that is owned by the nobles. Commoners also do not receive any political representation within the kingdom. As for how the government of the kingdom works, policies are decided upon at scheduled conferences between the king and the nobles. Nobles are free to govern their domains however they see fit, and free travel between domains is mostly prohibited, with citizens having to pay tolls or taxes to travel between domains. Nobles are also solely in charge of caring for the infrastructure of their domains. The kingdom itself is also largely peaceful, as it is protected from hostile demi-human countries by natural barriers and buffer countries in between them. However, because of this peace, and also because of the large amount of independence nobles have over their domains, the amount of corruption amongst nobles in the kingdom is rampant, and the kingdom has been suffering from it since its founding, according to Gazef Stronov. The corruption amongst nobles has also led to the government splitting into different factions, the royal and noble factions. The royal faction being nobles who support the king, and the noble faction being nobles who attempt to seize political power for themselves. This split amongst the government is one of the main reasons why King Ramposa has yet to abdicate the throne. The corruption of the government additionally allowed for the rise of a very prominent criminal underworld group called 8 Fingers. This group was able to amass large amounts of money through illegal trades such as drugs and human trafficking, which allowed them to bribe nobles and communities to assist with their activities. Their influence became so great that they virtually controlled the kingdom from behind the scenes. However, they were later dissolved during Season 2 of the anime due to the actions of the kingdom and Nazarik. Now, being a feudal state, titles and political authority within the kingdom is all hereditary. Particularly, they follow the structure of male primogeniture, with the eldest male child inheriting all titles and lands upon the death or retirement of their father. All sons other than the eldest do not inherit anything, and are usually only kept around to assist the eldest son, or as a spare in case the eldest son dies. Because of this, younger noble sons commonly become knights or butlers to royalty or ally noble families as a way to earn prestige outside of their own houses. Now, going back to the kingdom itself, as a result of the splintered and corrupt government, much of the kingdom's infrastructure is very poorly maintained and out of date. Formal education is almost non-existent for most of the population, with usually only those born of royalty, nobility, or wealth being provided with education. As a result, the literacy rate amongst the citizens of the kingdom is very low. Travel within the Re-Estize kingdom is also difficult because many nobles have neglected their domains. As a result, many roads have become damaged and unsafe for travel. The kingdom also somewhat discourages travel by operating on a guild-based system. This means that every city has its own guild with its own rules. A tradesman that is considered a master in one city would be considered a novice in another. As a result of this, people rarely immigrate between cities in the kingdom, especially after starting their careers. Now, as for its military power, Re-Estize is considered the weakest amongst the human nations in the region, with its military being worse than others in almost all aspects besides quantity. It possesses a very small standing army, with the majority of their military force being conscripts that are drafted during times of war. The number of soldiers that Re-Estize can muster is in between 200 to 600,000, which is an impressive amount compared to other nations in the region. However, the quality of their army is absolutely terrible. As I said before, most of the soldiers in the kingdom's army are conscripts who receive almost no training and are only really expected to hold in a spear wall formation. Actual battle-worthy soldiers only make up a portion of the army, which includes groups such as Gazef's warrior troop and other private forces for certain nobles that actually receive proper training. Additionally, because of its reliance on conscripted peasants, the annual wars between Re-Estize and the Baharuth Empire have been weakening the kingdom for some time. The empire deliberately times their attacks during the harvest season, in which peasants are called out from the fields to be in the army. As a result of calling them out, as well as losing a portion of the labor force in the actual battle, much of the harvest goes uncollected and has resulted in many peasants living in extreme poverty due to lack of food. The structure of the army is also completely abysmal. Compared to Baharuth, who has armed forces that are organized into branches and subunits, the kingdom's army can be seen as just a massive group of individual armies that vary in size and quality. For example, a low-ranking noble might only be able to muster around 100 peasants, while a great noble could muster well over 50,000 well-trained troops. Because of this mixed structure, the command hierarchy of the army is also difficult to manage. The king is supposedly in overall command, but because many nobles own private forces, they do not necessarily have to follow his commands. Additionally, the king fears exercising royal authority over the nobles to obey his commands due to them possibly holding grudges later on. As a result of this, carrying out cohesive commands within the kingdom's army is extremely difficult to achieve. The army also suffers from poor variety and equipment quality. Due to the massive amount of corruption amongst nobles as well as the sheer amount of soldiers, the kingdom does not have the funds to properly equip all of their soldiers. Most soldiers receive only one government-issued weapon, typically a spear, and usually with almost no protective gear. In some cases of peasants in the service of impoverished nobles, they sometimes have to fight with their farm tools and receive no equipment. Only small portions of the army receive proper equipment, such as warrior troops or royal knights. Magic weapons and armor are also virtually non-existent in the kingdom army and are reserved for top warriors like Gazef. The kingdom also has a deeply rooted belief that cavalry is what defines successful warriors and armies, and many within the kingdom, particularly the nobles, disregard the use of magic. Because of the nobles, the kingdom possesses no formal place for instruction in magic. Those who want to learn have to go to alternative sources. This also means that the kingdom lacks knowledge on how to employ magic for military purposes or how to effectively counter it. The lack of magic casters and poor training of their soldiers also limits the tactics of the kingdom's army. They mainly rely on overwhelming their enemy with sheer numbers, and one of the standard tactics they employ against the Empire is the spear wall. This is because a large segment of the Empire's army is cavalry, but also because the kingdom's soldiers lack sufficient training to do much more than hold their spears in formation. Now lastly, I want to touch upon the foreign relations of the kingdom. Now, by the time that Ainz was transported to the New World, the kingdom's relationship with its neighbors ranged quite wildly. The kingdom is openly hostile with the Baharuth Empire, as shown by their annual engagements with them at the Kotz Plains. As I said before, this is more a war of attrition the Empire is waging against the kingdom, weakening them for a later invasion. The tension between them also increased due to the actions of Eight Fingers, who sold a highly addictive drug to the Empire's citizens called Black Dust. So, fun fact, at some point in the past, the kingdom and the empire were actually both one nation together before they eventually split into two separate countries. Now, the kingdom is more or less neutral with the slain theocracy, with some of the kingdom's nobility even conspiring with them to try and assassinate Gazef in order to weaken the king's position. This was shown in season 1 of the anime. Despite this, there are people within the kingdom who criticize the theocracy's treatment of non-human races. Additionally, according to officials of the theocracy, the territory around Irantel, the capital of Re-Estize, originally belonged to the theocracy. The kingdom's foreign relations with other nations besides those two are much less detailed. We do know that they have strong ties with both the Arglan Council State and the City-State Alliance. They have very limited contact with other nations such as the Dwarf Kingdom, the Dragon Kingdom, and the Roble Holy Kingdom because of their geographical positions, but we do know that there is at least trade between the nations. In particular, the mining city of Re-Blumrusher is known to make small trade deals with the dwarves. And so guys, that covers the major aspects of the Re-Estize kingdom, one of the major nations of the Overlord world and story. As you can probably tell from my description, the kingdom is basically a failed state with a massive level of corruption and only has the appearance of functioning as a true country. The corruption prevents the kingdom from advancing in the same ways that Baharuth and the theocracy have, making the kingdom weak at almost all levels of government. It was already in a very fragile state before RE-estixe started getting involved in the world stage, and their actions during Season 3 have only pushed the kingdom even further to the brink of collapse. So guys, I hope you learned a little bit more about the kingdom in this video. I plan to continue by making videos about the Baharuth Empire and the Slain Theocracy as well. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it, please don't forget to hit that like button on your way out. If you aren't already, please subscribe to the channel as it helps me out more than you know, and it'll also let you know when I post in the future. With that being said, I want to thank you all for watching to the very end of the video, and I will see you all next time. Bye!